Evening, everybody. We'll call the meeting of the Consolidated City County Planning Board to order. We do have a quorum this evening. We'll go around and do introductions. My name is Quinlan O'Connor. I am chair and a city member. Marcia.
I am Ken Demmons, county.
Gene Walborn, city member.
And Lois.
Lois Steinbeck. Appointed by the county.
All right, thank you. The first and really only item on our agenda tonight is a discussion item for Senate Bill 382 update. And so I'll pass it off to Director Brink.
Thank you, Chair O'Connor and members of the board. Just a brief update. I've got a couple slides and a PowerPoint. We'll make it quick and brief. As I've stated a couple times, we've got a standing item on the agenda is to provide you Senate Bill 382 implementation updates. As you know, back in May of this year, the governor signed Senate Bill 382, which is known as the Montana Land Use Planning Act, which the city is compelled to comply with that act by May of 2026. And that's written in the statute for a city of our size and a county of our size. So there's certain thresholds and certain items we have to tackle within this implementation. So moving forward, the next several years, I'll be providing timely updates on this act implementation. The act itself, as I said, creates the Montana Land Use Planning Act to differentiate from the existing Montana Land Use Subdivision and Platting Act, which we currently operate under. And this new act requires cities, and I highlight cities and bold that to differentiate it. Initially, the act did have counties in there, but through negotiation, counties was stricken from having to comply with this act. Requiring certain cities that meet certain population standards to utilize the land use plan, and that's differentiated from the growth policy, which will still be in existence, but just won't apply to us anymore, or the city. The land use map, zoning regs, and subdivision regulations provided the act, requiring public participation during the development, adoption, or amendment of the land use plan, map, zoning regs, and subdivision regulations, providing strategies to meet population projections, providing for consideration of factors such as housing, facilities, economic development, natural resources, the environment, and natural hazards, which are almost identical in the current act with the growth policy, with some differentiation. When developing land use plan, map, and zoning regulations, providing for a procedure for review of subdivision, approval of final plats, providing for a local governing body to collect fees, providing an appeals process, enforcement mechanisms, and penalties, providing some definitions, repealing sections of 721, 101, 102, and 103 of MCA, and providing an immediate effective date, applicability date. So it became effective upon the governor's signature in May 17th of 2023. And so the city of Helena has to comply within 3 years of its signature or adoption. So that's May of 2026. These are the 10 cities in Montana that have to comply with this act: Belgrade, Billings, Bozeman, Great Falls, Columbia Falls, us, of course, Helena, Kalispell, Laurel, Missoula, and Whitefish. So primary components of the Land Use and Planning Act. The creation of a planning commission. I'll get in more in depth of what we're going to do moving forward, but I just want to go through the components real quick. So this act requires the formation of a planning commission, and that will be a consolidation of all existing land use boards and commissions that the city has, that being the zoning commission, board of adjustments, and the current city county planning board, which will now be the planning commission. Responsible for recommendations of all legislative land use and planning decisions. And you'll see it's just limited to legislative land use and planning decisions, not actual enforcement or the administrative part of implementing those land use items, zoning and subdivision regs. Creation of land use plan and future land use map, zoning regs, subdivision regulations, and then any other planning document so designated by the city commission. And then it will hear appeals from the planning officer for any administrative decisions. Another component of the Planning Act is the creation of a public participation plan. This plan will identify how the city will provide dissemination of documents, provide opportunity for comments from the public, how we operate our public meetings and what public meetings we're required to have, only as they relate to the Planning Act. Electronic communications and access, and the analysis of and response to all public comment. Public participation plan must emphasize that public comment will be narrowed as a process moved to site-specific development. You'll hear me talk some about how now the planning for the city of Helena is going to be front-loaded. So we do all the work on the front end. That's when the public has their say. That's when they have their greatest opportunity for public participation. The administrative functions now, subdivision approvals, are at a staff level or administrative level. So the public participation is narrowed when it comes to the administrative piece of what we will be doing moving forward. This land use plan, again, is no longer called the growth policy for us. We will have our own separate set of requirements under MCA. The growth policy and the Planning Act still will exist. Jurisdictions will still be under that. Lewis and Clark County being one. This land use plan is going to explore existing conditions, future estimates, and anticipated needs for housing. A difference here, we have to look at a 20-year population projection and then determine and calculate the number of housing units that are needed for that projection. And then how we're going to serve them, local services and facilities, public safety, emergency services, water, wastewater, solid waste, transportation, school system collaboration is a key component to the Planning Act, economic development, natural resources, environment, and the natural hazards. Another component of the land use plan is a future land use map. We have that currently. The only difference being now we're going to have to identify preferred anticipated development. Typically, it's been in the urban standards boundary, urban services boundary. We anticipate that being the same, but we also have to identify areas for future annexation to meet our anticipated population projections. And then identify adequate areas to accommodate the projected housing unit demand and need to serve that anticipated population growth. And then an implementation plan, which is the same analysis of current regulations and act inconsistencies. We have to be compliant and be consistent. Compliance steps to comply with the Planning Act, CIP adoption and amendment schedule, schedule for updating the plan for service extensions, and then progress for monitoring and evaluating progress of plan goals and objectives. Another component of the Planning Act, and I won't get too in depth with this because this is going to be later in the process, but part of this is we now have our own set of subdivision or zoning regulations and standards that we have to meet, a little different than what's in the current Planning Act. Zoning regulations, of course, regulate uses of land, density of uses, types of uses, size, character, number, form, and mass of buildings, and then provide some development standards to mitigate impacts of development that were identified during the development of the land use plan and map. That's where the public component is so important in the front end. And then we must adopt 5 of 14 anticipated housing strategies that were identified in the Act. We've gone through most of the 14, and we already comply with most of those 14 already. Another component, subdivision regs, will incorporate grading and erosion control, design and arrangement of lots, location of public utilities, provision of public improvements, and of course, legal and physical access to all lots, which is the same. All the exemptions that are currently across several state statutes regarding subdivisions and exemptions will be consolidated under one subdivision regulation that we'll work to adopt. So moving towards how we're going, what our schedule is. So the Planning Act implementation for us, we must comply again by May of 2026. And the way the statute is written, we have to be in compliance 3 years from the effective date of the act, which was May 17th. Or if our growth policy was adopted in the previous 5 years, which it was 4 years ago, then it's 5 years from that adoption, whichever is later. So of course, 3 years is the latest part of that. So May 2026, we should have a fully compliant subdivision, zoning, and land use plan. So initial implementation steps. So staff is currently working and crafting and drafting a public participation plan. We've got staff that have jumped on that pretty quick. We anticipate having this PPP for City Commission consideration by the end of October of 2023. This will not come before you for recommendation. This just goes straight to the City Commission. And of course, we need this work done before we start on the land use plan, because that's an integral piece of the actual work of the planning process. The next step that we're working on now, and I'll get into why we're going this route, but we're going to be creating a new planning commission just for the city that has implications for this body here, and I'll speak to that in a minute. Staff is currently working on a draft resolution that will create the actual planning commission, and we'll have initial specific targeted goals, tasks, and benchmarks, excuse me, for the planning commission. And then once we get in full compliance or towards the end of the process, closer to May of 2026, we'll actually create the planning commission by an ordinance and codify that. Excuse me. Initially, the planning commission is going to consist of 3 members, which is the minimum allowed by the Planning Act. And it's going to be selected by the commission, just like all of our recommended boards and commissions. And we anticipate opening that up for interested citizens through the current board and commission application process. Work of the Planning Commission will be assisted and supplemented with key advisors. So we anticipate, Mr. Chair, or other members that may be interested, serving as an advisory to the Planning Commission and just an advisory capacity. We'll also ask the chairman of the Zoning Commission, the Board of Adjustments, or any other members that would like to assist that 3-member Planning Commission in their work within the next 3 years. That doesn't impact you serving in your current capacity. It's just an advisory role to another body. You want to actually be members of that planning commission. Initially, the planning commission is going to be tasked with the land use plan and map creation, revisions to the zoning ordinance, if there are any, and then any revision to the subdivision regulations, again, if there are any. We do anticipate, and we're going to, bring in a consultant to assist on at least the land use plan and map creation. And this board will collaborate, the planning commission will collaborate with that consultant, and maybe other aspects of the Planning Act, being the zoning and subdivision regs. Staff is currently drafting an RFP for consulting services for the land use plan. We anticipate that RFP to be wrapping up and an end date for responses by November of this year. Hopefully we can select a consultant by January of 2024 and get started on that document by March of 2024. We anticipate that to be a 1.5-year process. So July into summer, 1st of autumn of July or of 2025, we should have that wrapped up. The next part of the implementation will be, of course, zoning and subdivision regs. We anticipate that because of where we are with our documents in compliance with the Planning Act already. It's not going to be a heavy lift for staff to do that. We don't anticipate that taking long, so we should wrap that up in a draft form by March of 2026 and be well implemented before the deadline of 2026. Of course, the goal is always to get that done quicker, but we're giving us every every ounce of time we can to get that wrapped up. So existing boards and commissions. So all of our existing boards and commissions, being the planning board, zoning commission, board of adjustments, will absolutely remain intact for the foreseeable future, for at least through the next 3 years, until the planning commission is created via ordinance and when we're compliant with the Planning Act. Excuse me. While we work towards compliance, we'll still be operating under current MCA planning statute and city codes. That's why we still need those boards in their current form and function, because we still have work that we'll have to be doing before we transition to the Planning Act. And then, of course, this body, which initially we anticipated it being needed for MPO designation, that may not be the case anymore. MDT has provided us some other options to be a designated authority and what that's going to look like. But still, we need all of our boards as they exist today because we still have work under current statutes and city codes to still be able to operate. That was a lot. So speaking with county staff and internally with city staff, the reason why so the statute does allow us to use an existing board to function as our planning commission. We could absolutely keep this body intact and use it as a planning commission. But remember, at the end of the day, you are volunteers, you're volunteer planners. That is a heavy lift or heavy task, a big task for us to ask you to do, to one, manage the implementation of a new set of state statutes for just the city, as well as keep those two separate statutes separate when you deliberate and do work of both the city and the county. And there could be other implications about, when you're doing that work, are you truly keeping those two codes separate when you're deliberating? So it just became cleaner just to separate the two boards. So that's kind of where we came to a conclusion. We just needed to separate the two bodies. We could keep them. We could keep it just like it is. But we thought that was a lot to ask for volunteer citizen planners to take on that task of operating under two state statutes for two separate entities. Any questions? No, that was a lot.
Mr. Chair, Chris, thank you very much just for the overview. I saw some language on your first slide with the kind of the overview of the 382 language. I'm just curious of your interpretation. The sixth line down, providing strategies to meet population projections. What's a strategy to meet?
So that's mainly targeted to housing strategy. So when we provide population projections for the next 20 years, we also have to provide strategies on how we're going to serve that population, either it be housing, either it be the extension and provision of city services. That's what the intent of, providing strategies. How are we going to serve that population that we anticipate? Currently, we don't really take that into account when we craft our subdivision regs and zoning, but now we have to take that into consideration, how we're going to meet those needs. And that's when I talked about it's front loaded. So we look at all this now rather than wait to figure out how we're going to provide services when a developer comes to us with a project. Now we take this into account at the front end, as opposed to when the project comes. Essentially, when a project comes to us, we should have all of that already figured out.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that makes much more sense than trying to meet a population projection.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
Marcia, did you have a question?
Mr. Chairman, I guess one of my questions or observations is under the new projected procedure, it really will give an opportunity to take a clearer look at what kind of city we want to be. I mean, if you're looking at strategies over a 20-year period, all of the considerations of, how we want our city to work will come into play. Would that not make sense?
It does, and that was the goal and idea of this act. It makes us think more. It actually makes us plan more and use the true function of a planning commission or even a planning board. I mean, it's in your title, but yet we tend to be reactive. Now we have to do this up front.
Are there other questions? Is Lois raising her hand?
No, Mr. Chair.
Lois, James, Adrian, any questions for Chris?
And I'll
Fine.
absolutely, as we have updates, I'll make sure to keep this as a standing item on all the agendas and provide you timely updates as we move forward. Keep you in the loop.
Adrian, go ahead.
Hey, y'all, I just wanted to check in and make sure that I was able to. I
Just
know
a
I don't
minute, I
have.
need to do something so we can hear you.
Sure.
Go ahead, Adrian.
Okay, well, now it's just silly. I was just stepping in to say thank you so much for the presentation. I don't have any questions and I appreciate all the work that went into it.
Hi, can you hear me?
Go ahead, James.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to agree with that, I guess, and then also ask, is there anything that you could use from us? Anything we can do to assist with this process that you're going to go through?
So thank you, board member. Yes, so we anticipate utilizing all of our existing boards, this one in particular, to be an advisor to the new planning commission.
Sure.
Of course, and I'll just say it outright, I don't want to pilfer this board, but there is opportunity for all of our boards and commissions to make application for the planning commission, provided you're, residents of the city, of course. But we're not looking to pilfer members from the board. We want to use you as advisors for this new group. Then, eventually maybe there's opportunity for, when these boards become consolidated and or split, to actually increase the size of the planning commission. Right now, the target is just 3 members. We anticipate this new planning commission to be 5 to 7 members probably when we get to May of 2026. But initially, just because it may become unwieldy for new process to have a board that's bigger than 3. That's why we're going to rely on all of our boards, this one in particular, to be advisors to that group.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any further questions? All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman.
I believe we have no other business on our agenda. Does the city know if it has agenda items for the August meeting yet? You don't know, that's okay. I just always ask.
We don't. We can, I don't want to say make something up, but maybe I'll have some
Please
other.
don't.
Maybe I'll have other updates. But if there's no business, statutorily, it's not required to have one in August. So if there's no business, and Greg would, my counterpart, would probably concur, then we would not need to meet. So.
Great, okay. Well, so the next scheduled meeting is August 15, which will be held if there is something to be put on the agenda, so we'll wait to hear on that. So now is the time for public comment on any public matter not on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of this board. There's no members of the public in the room. Are there any online who would like to comment?
If you are online and would like to comment, please raise your hand now. There are no hands raised.
Great. So with that, we will be adjourned. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you all. Have a good night.